everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Time Mastery Workshop, Taking Back Control of Your Day. I'm really excited to be your host. My name is Amanda, and Jenny is also here and will be helping us out by answering any of your questions throughout the webinar. In case you're not as familiar with Surefire and who we are located in Northern Virginia, and we help small businesses drive visibility through all channels on the web so they can continue to grow their business with ease. Our mission here is to educate businesses on a variety of topics to help you succeed and help the industry grow. We're very fortunate to have Mark G. Richardson as our advisor, and I'm really excited to have him joining us on this webinar today. If you have any questions for Mark during the presentation, you can communicate with us using the question box in your webinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Why don't you go ahead and see if you can locate that right now, and let us know where you're joining us from today. Because you're on the webinar with us right now, you have a chance to win the Google Home Hub that we will be giving away at the end of the talk. Stay tuned till the end when we will be announcing a winner. Today we have Mark G. Richardson, leading authority in the home services industry and author of 3 books. You'll have a chance to request one of his best-selling books at the end of the webinar. Today he has a wonderful presentation for you all. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome everyone. Today the presentation webinar we're going to be focusing on is a subject about time. Time is something that is probably one of the few common denominators that really touches all of us. One of the fundamental differences, though, is how masterful we are of time. And the impact of time, I think, today is really greater than ever in terms of potentially the levels of stress that it is putting us in if we're not masterful of it. So let me walk you through what our agenda is today. I'm going to start kind of looking at the subject from a 1,000-foot level and trying to help you frame and think about and understand time. Then we're going to establish some whys. Why is it important to change? Why is it important to adjust? Because what I've found, whatever it is, if you're sick, you might want to change kind of your behaviors if in fact you want to get well. When it comes to time, you're never going to be successful at mastering time unless you have a strong reason and why to change. Then we're going to take some inventory. Take some inventory about different ways that you're spending time. And where your levels of stress are with time. Then we're going to talk about developing some time skills. Time, actually, in becoming masterful is very much of a skill. It's very much of a science more than it is an art. And I think the more that you can put your time and energy into skills, just like you do in sports or writing or typing or other kinds of things, I think that's where I think your ultimate success is. Then what we want to do is I'm going to take you through a time mastery system. This system is a tool that you can overlay with some of your other planning processes, and this will help you to be successful. No different than if you're, developing or drawing a little blueprint for a project. That blueprint is a way that helps you understand and map out a roadmap for what you want to ultimately build, and this time mastery system is really a way to do that. Then I want to talk about kind of avoiding mistakes. I think with a lot of people who kind of are suffering from lack of time mastery, quite frankly, they're making mistakes when it comes to time. So if you don't do anything else but just try to avoid some of these time-related mistakes, you're going to be more successful. And then we're going to wrap up the webinar today kind of with some few extra little tips and stress cloud tool that I have developed that I think is very useful for many people, and that's to just take your game to the next level. So as you can see, it's very much of a process, just like you see on the slide, starting with a fundamental understanding and ultimately becoming more masterful and taking it to the next level. So starting at a high level for a minute, what I've found, and I've had an opportunity to hang out with some of the best when it comes to time or when it comes to just successful business people is that I find one common denominator is that there's three key ingredients for success. And I want to unpack these for you and then talk about them a little bit. The first one is you got to have the right mindset. You know, Henry Ford said, if you think you can or can't, you're right. If you don't have the right mindset, and the mindset involves not only the right attitude, the right work ethic, making the right choices, you've got to have the right mindset if you're going to be successful. The second is that you've got to have some skills. You've got to be fundamentally fit. If you're not fundamentally fit, you're going to fall short and certainly not be as successful. And then the last is, you know, you've got to change. And, you know, a friend of mine in an acceptance speech says, if you're not changing, you're going to become irrelevant. And that's the ultimate insult that I think you all need to try to avoid. So when you think about these three words for a minute here, it's not one or the other helps you to be success. They fit together in an interesting kind of puzzle piece that if you have the right gung-ho attitude and you're fit but you're not adjusting, you will fail. If you're adjusting and you have the right mindset but you don't have your axe sharp, you will fail. You need all three of these fitting together kind of in concert to see the kind of level of success that you really deserve. So another important theme is that all people are not time mastery equal. And if you think about this kind of visually and graphically, like you see on the slide, it's kind of like three glasses. You know, is the glass half empty, half full, or completely full? So let's just talk about what they are for a minute. Some of you, quite frankly, are a hot mess. You're a train wreck when it comes to your mastery of time. So you might be at this stage in so much stress that you need to rethink your time, but you also need to start with baby steps. One of the big mistakes I think we tend to make as people is we don't necessarily start with the baby steps. You also need to get back to the basics. It's so important that you start with the simple things, the blocking and tackling when it comes to time, before you get into the more complex. There's another group of you listening to this that, you know, you're doing okay, but what you want to do is enhance your time mastery skills. You want to reduce some of the stress. You want to focus maybe on some of the weak link. You want to just learn more about the subject and add a few techniques. Then there's others that are already, quite frankly, relatively strong when it comes to time management or time mastery, but you want to take it to the next level. You really want to grow. You want to gain hours in a week. You want to accomplish those big goals. And you want to just overall take, I think, your understanding of the subject to the next level. So I'm not here to judge which of these you fall in, because it's not a good or bad. But just like with a patient, you know, you've got to know where you are in this process if, in fact, you want to be successful. So I encourage you, as you listen to some of the things I'm talking about today, try to filter it not only in terms of your understanding of the subject, but where you are at this stage in your mastery of time, and you're going to be more successful at it. So let's talk a little bit about why. Why is it important to control your day? You know, why is being in control of your day important? If you know the why behind it, you can start to articulate it. So I encourage you, get out a piece of paper and actually write down a list of all those reasons why. It might be, for example, that you want to reduce some stress and overwhelm. And that's understandable. Today, the speed at which things are happening, the proliferation of choices, certainly the technologies that are out there has created a level of stress. I think that might be one of the reasons that you want to become more time masterful. You want to accomplish more. I mean, that sounds like a simple thing, but the reality is if you have an extra hour in the day or an hour in the week, that's more that you could accomplish. How would you feel if you accomplish more? Another is that you just feel like you need to invest a little bit more time to improve yourself. You know, we all want to get better, but the one reason that I find as I coach and work with different business leaders and different people is that they oftentimes say they don't have time to get better at something. Whether it's better at leadership, whether it's better at sales management, whether it's better at sales techniques. It might be that you also just want to start keeping your promises more. Think about how you feel when you don't keep your promises. Another reason to become more time masterful is you will think more clearly. And I'll talk about this when it comes to the inventory, but it's important to think clearly today to make the right decisions. One of the areas that oftentimes leaders fall short is that they're so time-starved, they're not able to think clearly at the decisions, and they're just reacting. The last, and certainly not least, is that you want to achieve the medium and long-term goals. You know, what I found that's kind of interesting is most people focus on the short term and not necessarily the medium and long term. And the only way I think to get better at this is, in fact, if you have the time to focus on medium and long terms. But you know, the bottom line on all this is it'll make you feel better and more fulfilled. And I think for most of you, that's certainly in itself really worth kind of the energy of putting some time into it. So let's talk a little bit about understanding time. First thing I want to talk about is how time has changed. Now, the then, whatever the then is in your terms, it could be 10 years ago, could be 20 years ago versus the now. So 10 years ago, the technology was really optional. Yes, of course it was there, but it was very optional. Whereas today, we have a dependence on technology. Now, many of the things I think we've talked about, this dependence on technology really has changed the way we look at time. In the past, time would build value. Oftentimes we would say we'd be getting back to a client on 3 days, 5 days, where today time is not on your side. You know, you may have heard the adage, time kills deals. Well, one of the biggest reasons that you oftentimes lose a deal is in fact today because of time. In the past, we used to talk about, at least 30 years ago, you know, a fairly common conversation is, what do you do in your free time? Well, we don't really talk about free time so much anymore because time is just not free. It doesn't mean you're working 24/7, but what it does mean is we don't have that voids of time that we used to have, that we had to think of things to just do in that free time. Another thing when it comes to time is how quickly we respond. You know, many years ago, we had some time to respond to things. We could return a call the next day or two. You know, whereas today, we have to return calls, we have to text back, we have to do things within that hour, otherwise that whoever we're communicating to either will move on or they're frustrated. In the past, we used to talk about what are your office hours. Matter of fact, we used to talk about banker's hours many, many years ago. Whereas today, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're connected, whether it's through the internet or we're connected in terms of what we do, in terms of our smartphones, 24/7. And that's really the expectation. Now, the reality is that in the past, we had 24 hours a day, and as we certainly know, we still have 24 hours a day. Now, I share this because for those of you that are feeling stressed and feeling overwhelmed and feeling time-starved, there's a reason for it, and that is how we're looking at time and how we're shaping our time today is very different than it was in the past. So let's just touch on a few time wasters. You know, one is just not planning. And we'll talk a lot about that, and I'll give you a tool that'll help you with that. Another simple time waster is not writing things down. You know, one of the things that is important for always writing things down, and I'm giving you even a tool that you can write things down, is that you don't have to think about it because you know that it's been written down. You know, talking, not listening, is actually in many cases a waste of time. I was reading a book actually just the other day, talks about active listening and the importance of listening with intent as opposed to listening to wait till you can just speak. Those are two different kinds of listening, and today a time waster is that if you're filling that kind of the void with just words, you're not listening, you're probably wasting time. Simple tasks. There are a lot of simple tasks that you do, believe it or not, that you waste time. A simple one I found several years ago, I was just curious how long it takes me to make a pot of coffee in the morning. So I actually timed myself, and it took not a huge amount of time, but it took 3 minutes to make that pot of coffee. Well, I just literally looked at some of the different steps, I adjusted them, multiplied and actually saved some time. I was able to get it down to 1 minute and 40 seconds to make a pot of coffee. Now, many of you might say, that's a little weird, that's a little bit obsessed to be worried about that saving of 1 minute and 20 seconds. Well, when you add that up by someone who makes a pot of coffee every single day, that's saving 8 to 10 hours in a year. Then all of a sudden, if you say to yourself, you know, if I only had that 8 to 10 hours to do something else in a year, all of a sudden it becomes more meaningful. There's a lot of time wasters in the simple task. Not leveraging your time. The only way to really properly leverage your time is to plan it properly, and I'm going to give you some tools to better leverage your time. Another important time waster is how you go about communicating. It's more important that you're effective, not just efficient. You know, today especially, since we have so many different ways of communicating, of calling and texting and emailing and face-to-face communication, sending out carrier pigeons, whatever it happens to be, you have to ask yourself, I think, what is the most effective way to communicate and what is the least effective, and that can become a big time waster. Another time waster is being too fast or too slow. You know, you've got to find the right cadence. So what's critical in this exercise is make a list of things yourself. What are your time wasters? Because if you can isolate 1 or 2 of those time wasters a day and you can do something about it, there's a giant dividend of time that you'll be giving back to yourself. So a few time myths that I want to touch on. One is faster is better. No, better is better, not faster is better. You know, sometimes we make time mistakes by doing things too fast. Another myth is that there's not enough time for things. When I'm coaching and working with individuals or leaders of different companies, I hear this a lot. The reality is the question is how you choose to use your time, not that there's not enough time. The most successful people out there somehow accomplish these things, so if you think it's impossible, just take a look at someone that's doing it. I don't have time to plan. You know, this is another, I think, myth. It's okay to be late. It's not okay to be late. You know, I heard from a friend of mine, Salafano, once said, you know, late plus excuse, me equals on time. You know, while that's really clever and funny, it's not okay to be late. It's disrespectful to be late, and it's a big waste of time. Focusing on your top priority first, that's not always the best. And when we take some inventory, what I'm going to talk to you about is doing the right thing first, not necessarily the top priority. It takes what it takes is not necessarily true. You can control and you can squeeze out the amount of time it takes. You know, a friend of mine oftentimes really questions the amount of time conference calls should take, and he'll actually have an odd number in terms of an amount of time a conference call should take, and he really sets that agenda that this should be a 15-minute or a 20-minute or a 25-minute conference call than just kind of assuming that time is filling the air. And then also, and I talked about this before, that time is really not free. So one way I encourage you to start to think about time, and the fact that you're even listening to this webinar right now, and I have some videos that you'll have access through in coming back to Surefire on this, but you know, is making time meaningful for you. So one way to look at this is, what is 10 minutes a day equal to in the course of a year? It's 3,650 in a year, which is 61 hours in a year. Just think about that. If you can just figure out a way to save 10 minutes a day, that's 61 hours in a year. But the most important thing is, what does that mean to you? If you really put some meaning to 61 hours in a year, you're going to have the focus to really improve. How about 30 minutes a day? 11,000 minutes in a year, 183 hours in a year. Think about that in terms of work weeks. That's almost 5 work weeks for many people, just by spending or saving 30 minutes or finding different ways of doing it. Taking that a step further, 60 minutes is almost 22,000, which is 365 hours in a year, literally a couple of months of work week time. Now, I encourage you to think about this, because the question becomes, what does that extra 100 hours a year mean to you? Because if, in fact, you have a higher degree of meaning to that, you're going to focus yourself on improving and following some of the techniques that I'll give you. Take it a step further. What is 200? What is 300? But the key thing is making time more concrete. It will make it more meaningful, and you'll start to waste time, but you'll also find these tools that I'm going to give you more useful. So one of the important themes is understanding the difference between being efficient versus effective. We oftentimes ask each other, is this the most efficient way to do this? Well, don't necessarily focus on efficient, focus on effective. And looking at a couple simple definitions, efficient is about doing things with the least resources in the shortest amount of time, whereas being effective is about accomplishing the goal or outcome in the best way. We always want to focus on trying to do it the best way. And I think this techniques that we're going to be talking about today will help you do that. So let's talk about taking some inventory. Just like going into your pantry and taking some inventory, or your closet taking some inventory, you have to do the same exercise when it comes to your time. So one of the areas that I encourage people to do is take inventory of the amount of reactive and proactive time. Now, defining this is reactive that others control and proactive that you control. So whether you do this now and on the webinar, I encourage you to really reflect on. Think about it like over the course of a week, not just a day, but over the course of the week. What percentage of your time is reactive that others control versus proactive that you control? It's got to add up to 100%. So just create that ratio for yourself. Now, what I find is you've then got to focus on the sources of reactive activity. You ideally want to move to a place, going back to this slide, of 80% proactive and 20% reactive. Now, this is going to vary depending on what your role in the business is. However, for most people involved in sales or production or leadership or ownership in a business, you ought to be at least 80% proactive and 20% reactive. Now, if many of you are in that, really hot mess kind of category that I talked about at the beginning, you probably are there because of a high percentage of reactive time. So here's what I would encourage. Look at the primary sources of reactive activity. There really are three. The first is your clients. So what I want you to do is with your active clients, and in the remodeling business, you might have 5, 10, 15 active clients. Monday morning, when you start your day, I want you to make a list of those 5 to 15 clients, and I want you to spend 20 minutes or so proactively communicating to each one of those clients. And what you're going to proactively communicate, hey, John, just thinking about you, I know there are a couple issues on your project. How about if we set a time on Tuesday at 12 o'clock to chat and catch up on things, and maybe we can address any questions then? A simple little note, email, text to them. Or, for example, you might circle back and say, I'm going to be out at your home 12 o'clock on Friday, so make a list of those things and I'll address them then. But try to proactively. Now, of your 10 active clients out there, 3 or 4 of them are going to see that as professional, appreciate it, and respond accordingly. They're going to just say, not bother you. They're not going to react. There's going to be 1 or 2 of them that, quite frankly, no matter what you do, they're going to still control the exercise. And then there's going to be a few of them that will go on and solve the problems in their own way because they know you're busy and you're not available just at a whim. So what I've done is I've taken this and I've started to reduce. If you're 50-50, reactive and proactive, just by focusing on the tip I just gave you, you're shifting it to 40% reactive and 80% proactive. The second source of reactive activity is your team. Now, your interruptions with your team create a lot of problems when it comes to the reactive activity that's out there. So what you need to do is when you're challenged with your team, what you need to do is simply say to them, how about if I get back with you at 1 o'clock today when I can really focus on it? Simply by setting in a time to be able to do it, you're going to reduce the amount of reactive, and you're going to condition your team members to be a little bit more respectful, handle certain things themselves, but also you're not being disrespectful because you've actually certainly been accommodating to be able to tell them when you can be able to do it. The third source, which really is just like the clients in your team, is your family. I encourage you to use the same techniques that you do with the team and with the clients, with your family, and you're going to find that this is going to reduce down. Now, what did I just do? I've just taken your 50-50 or your 60-40, whatever it is, and I haven't completely changed it, but I've increased the amount of proactive activity for you. And by doing this and getting accustomed to doing this, you'll quickly, over a period of time, get it to raise up to about 80% proactive and 20% reactive. So a few proactive tips. One, we've talked about taking inventory, don't fly blind. Second is improve in baby steps. Third is establishing the time that's allowed and then to do it. So if I've allowed, for example, 30 minutes to have a meeting with someone or a call with someone, establish that time up front and then use that amount of time for it. Set appointments rather than just react. Also, don't forget saying no. Sometimes is not a bad thing, especially if you really truly believe it's not appropriate for you to handle something. And then lastly, as Norman Vincent Peale said, plan your work for today and every day, then work your plan. It really happens in that sequence. You got to plan and you got to do it for today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but you have to do it for today. You got to do it every day, develop the habit, and then and only then you work the plan. So, taking a look at the blend and the percentages when it comes to your time. What I encourage you to do, and I'll give you a little chart here that you can be able to do that. And again, if you circle back to Surefire, they can send you some of these charts if it'd be helpful to you. But top 5 to 7 categories of what your time would. And what you need to do, if you're involved in sales, it might be sales appointment, it might be generating leads, might be sales meetings, it might be project-related work, but what are they? What percentage of the time that you spend? And then what you do is you write down the ideal. Now let me give you a chart of how to do this. I actually was working with a person involved in sales, and we took some inventory, and you can see those are the 7 categories that we determined. Once we determined the 7 categories, the vertical on the left side with the activities, then we said the amount of hours per week that this individual averaged. We used a percentage just because it allowed us to kind of think as a blend there, allowed us to compare a little bit better. And then we took a blank canvas, and I said to him, now if you had a perfect world, how much time would you spend on each one of these? Now in this case, the individual said, I'd like to do 1 more appointment a week. I said, okay, how much time? Well, I could do that in 2 hours more a week. He said also, to get that 1 more appointment a week, I'd probably have to spend a little bit more time on marketing myself and my services, just spending a little bit more time keeping in touch with clients. I said, okay, what else? How about training? Well, I'd like to sharpen that axe a little bit more, and I think it'll help me close more deals as well as be more effective. Terrific. How about your project work? Well, I'd like to keep that about the same. Internal meetings. Well, I think if we tighten that up, I could take that down for about an hour a week. I said, great. How about site visits? Well, I can also take that down or combine them and be a little bit more efficient when I'm doing those site visits and maybe do some of them biweekly rather than weekly. And then administrative activities, by sharpening up and being a little bit more efficient, he felt he could save a couple of hours a week. Now, the total amount of hours on this chart through what he's spending now and ideal is the same amount, 45 hours. And I'm not judging the amount of hours per week, but as you can see, the ideal blends just shifted. Not that much. Well, here's the cool results that came out of it. This resulted in this individual increasing their sales by about 25% as a result of spending the time differently than they were. So it's critical, I think, for you to think about it in these terms if, in fact, you want to see better results. Another way to take inventory is starting to know yourself a little bit better. So knowing yourself and how you spend your time, when you spend your time, and what you spend your time on is important. So let's look at another chart. This chart is actually one I created for myself because, I think it's really an exercise that's good for everybody to do. So what you do is you create this simple chart, and on the left side, you break apart the different times during the day. Early in the morning, mid-morning, so on, all the way to late evening. Then the next vertical is your mindset. That's your frame of mind, so to speak. So come up with a word that best describes your frame of mind during that period of time. So in my case, as an example, early in the morning, I'm really more reflective. And then in mid-morning, I'm more creative. Then as I get later in the day, I start to wind down. I start to disconnect and not be as focused. And then I really need my evenings to relax and recharge. Then you look at the kind of activities that you want to do during that mindset and during that time. And again, I do most of my writing, for example, oftentimes in the mid-morning, where I'm putting together presentations for talks and things in the late morning. Okay, that's when I'm most productive to do those kind of things. And then late in the day, I just need to, have my evening feed me, and oftentimes we'll pick up and watch TV or do something like that. So you can look at different activities that really work for you in that time. The other thing you need to think about is where you should be. Now, in my case, I really like to be in a very quiet place to plan early in the morning. I like to have, be in my office, in the mid-morning, whereas in the middle part of the day, oftentimes I'm bouncing around, either going to client meetings or doing different kinds of things. So you can adjust your location throughout the day as well. At least most people have that luxury to be able to do. So what you want to do is you want to marry the activities to the amount of time it takes, but also where you're doing it. So another important thing about mastering times is trying to make it visual. There's a bit of an adage that if you can see it, you'll get it. I'm a big believer in making things more visual, and the time techniques that I'll share with you, they're really designed to be able to do that. So making things visual, start to diagram time. Start to think of it more as a pie chart of time. Start to, develop time in terms of flow charts. All those things are about making time more visual, and you'll be more effective, I think, in understanding it. Another important skill when it comes to time is being able to estimate time. Now, one of the things that oftentimes people are fearful of is, in fact, estimating. However, if you can't estimate time properly, which is a skill that you can get better and better at, it's very hard to predict the amount of time. And if you can't predict the amount of time, it's very hard to plan the time. So when it comes to estimating, first is try to make it fun. I like that when I'm doing estimating kind of workshops and things, I like to have some fun games involved in estimating time. Estimating shouldn't be scary. It's not a commitment. It's really how much time are you budgeting for things, not necessarily an exact number. The second is you want to be thinking in terms of aggressive but realistic when you're estimating. Aggressive means there's a little bit of an edge, but realistic means you're not ignoring kind of the reality of life and certainly history. Make sure when you're estimating, start to practice writing things down. The more you write things down, the more that your brain starts to get conditioned to how much time it takes. And then you also want to start to think about your time and break it in parts. If you've got a big task to do, it's much better to break it in parts. For example, let's say it's a presentation you're doing. Okay, first part is I need to put together an outline. The second is I need to brainstorm some content. The third is I need to do a draft. And the fourth is I need to do the final presentation. So by breaking that overall task in 4 parts and then estimating how long each is going to take, you're going to be much more realistic and certainly more accurate. And if you are, you're going to be more committed to it. So the next thing I want to get into is an actual system for you. This is a tool. This is a tool that if you contact Surefire, they will send you a copy of my Time Mastery book that has all this illustrated. However, you can, as you'll see in a minute, I'm going to walk you through an exercise. You can actually come up with this yourself. I also, if you contact Surefire, they have some mini videos that I've created actually showing me to demonstrate this Time Mastery system for you. And again, you need a system if you're going to be successful. So I said this little quote before, but I'll say it again, and that is it all starts with a plan. Plan what you need to do, your work, your activities for today. Not yesterday, not the day after, not next month, for today. You have to do it every single day, and if you do it every day, you'll develop the skill and the habit. Then and only then, once I have a blueprint all laid out for my day, that's when I work the plan. And I follow it step by step, and then I end up accomplishing so much more. So what do I mean by that? Usually the students either come to my workshop or I coach on this. They might have 4 out of 5 days during the week that they feel a little bit challenged, that they're not accomplishing everything that they want. If you use this tool 3 out of 4 days, you'll 100% accomplish what you set out to once you master it, and then maybe 1 or 2 days of the week you'll fall a little bit short. But as a result of that, you're going to get a giant dividend. You're going to feel better, less stress, all the reasons why I talked about in the beginning. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. There's a system involved here in a process. And just like at the beginning, there's a setup, there's a brain dump, there's some reflection time, there's utilizing the system. All this will make more sense when I get into the plan just in a minute, and then you launch it and then you monitor it. All of these steps are important. Just like when you're baking cookies, it's important that you take a look at the recipe, you get the ingredients, you make sure you have the right ingredients, the right amount, you have the right tools, you preheat the oven. You've got to do all those things if you want the outcome to be what you want it to be. So here's the framework for the first 30 days. If in fact you want to be successful at this, you've got to commit to 30 days. It takes that amount of time to form a little habit. And I was just reading, it really takes more than that to form a habit. However, I'm at least asking you to make a 30-day commitment, because most people, after they're into this for 2 or 3 weeks, they really get kind of somewhat addicted to this process, and it becomes an integral part of a successful day. Realize the first week is going to be tough. Anything you start to do, the first week is tough. Follow my techniques 100%. And I know this for some is not what you want to do, but I'm encouraging you to do it. You must invest 30 minutes minimum every day, and it's got to be in the morning. Include both your personal and professional activities that you have to do in that particular day, and try to be disciplined but not obsessed by it. Try to have the discipline, but don't get obsessed by some of these techniques. So here's the setup. Here's how we get going. You've got to start out in a quiet place every morning. You cannot do this in the breakfast table with a family. Start it 60 minutes before your first activity, and always use an 8.5 by 11 spiral notebook. It's really important to do this by hand. At least for the first few months, you got to do it manually and not necessarily organize it on your Outlook calendar or some other way. Have all of your information and all your ingredients, so to speak, in front of you to create the meal. That's your data, your notes from yesterday, different tools, your computer, your phone, your text, all those emails, all the stuff. Have all that in front of you as you're organizing and kind of crafting this blueprint for your day. Turn off your cell phone for that 30 minutes. And I know that's hard for some of you, but turn it off because you got to focus, and now you're ready to actually do a successful plan. So imagine what you're looking at is an 8.5 by 11 notebook. It's a spiral notebook, and in this 8.5 by 11, on the top left, you want to put the day and a theme for the day. In this case, I said, okay, I wanted to see some balance. Now, the first thing that you want to do is a brain dump. Looking at your calendar, looking at your notes, looking at your text, all those things, start doing a brain dump. And you literally write as fast as you can and do this brain dump. You get it down to the end where all these items that you put there, and abbreviate if you have to, then what you want to do is put reactive time. Everybody has reactive time, and you just want to make a note of that. Then you want to get up and go to the restroom or go get a cup of coffee or get some water or something and really reflect and ask yourself, is there anything else in this timeout, this minute or two of timeout that I need to accomplish? And in this case, you're always going to come up with 1 or 2 little things, okay? This is a brain dump. Now, for most of you that do a to-do list, that's where you stop. A to-do list is not a plan. It's just a to-do list. The next thing you want to do is attach time to these activities. So you simply, by adding or having the amount of time for each one of these, and this is where you have to just guess and estimate, and you're going to get better and better at this, you're going to have all the different amounts of minutes next to each one of these. The next thing that you want to do is add up all the minutes available. So by adding up all the minutes available, that's 11.25 hours. Then you want to do an actual visual timeline setup. On the right side of the paper, draw a line and have a beginning and an end to that line. Look at the beginning of your day, and in this case, when I was doing the planning was 6:30, and it moved on, and the end of the day was 6 o'clock. Now, so you can see from 6:30 to 6 o'clock is 11 and a half hours. So I look over and I say, can I fit 11.25 hours in an 11 and a half hour day? Needless to say, the answer to that is yes, you can do that. So then you go on and you designate little blocks within that, in those little time slots that you've created for yourself. The next thing you want to do is when you have meetings or when you have a seminar to be at or a webinar, you block out those times so you can visually see the available times that are available. Now, and here's what you want to do, is hook the two together. So what I want to do is I want to start to put the letters that block out the times in with the actual activities. Now, the next thing I want to do is analyze. So what I want to do is I want to add up all the A's, all the B's, and then determine, do they fit within that time slot? Because in many cases, I have to keep working it. So in this case, the A time slot, 7 to 8:30, that's 90 minutes. It adds up from the left to 80 minutes, so I know I can fit that in. By the way, going back to one other thing, always start with 120 minutes of reactive time. As you get better and better at this, you'll reduce that down to less time. For myself, for example, I allow 40 minutes a day. Now, reactive time is also something every quarter, every semi-annual basis will change a bit. I used to allow 30 minutes, and I've actually moved it up so that it's a little bit more in sync, and 40 minutes seems to work. Okay, the next one I have is launching. So now I have, you can look at that day for a minute here, and you see I've got a good solid day to be able to work with, and now I want to launch my day. Now the next thing, and it's key, is to monitor. Monitor throughout the day. I want to carry this notebook with me and circle the letters as I'm moving through. And at the end of the day, you're going to find, you're going to accomplish, and you're going to take some inventory in the middle of the day and make appropriate tweaks. Now I know for many of you looking at this, it's almost overly simplistic. Just like I think many things in life are overly simplistic. So here's an example that I just flashed up there of a day that adds up to 13 hours. It doesn't fit. So what do? Now you have to go back and you have to work the day. For example, I had to go back and I have to say to myself, in calling Tom Kelly in Oregon, well, maybe I don't do that. Maybe, in fact, I have to send him a note rather than make a call that day and set up a call on a different day. So now all of a sudden I save 40 minutes by doing that in 20 minutes. I might also try to leverage some of these activities. Maybe I do some of the things, during lunch that I can do that I really don't need to think about it too much and combine some of the activities. But the bottom line is, do not start your day if the total amount of time doesn't add up to the time available. All you're doing is creating a formula to fail. So some monitoring tips. Monitoring is really one of the key steps in this process. There's a reason, for example, that 92% of the people fail on New Year's resolutions, and it's not because they were stupid or unrealistic. You fail with New Year's resolutions at least 50% of the time because you don't monitor or you have a system to monitor. So when you're planning your day, you need to carry around this notebook because you got to look how you're doing every 60 to 90 minutes. Take a look. If you need to tweak and adjust, you do. Carry that plan with you. Middle of the day, allow about 10 minutes, and this can be part of your reactive time, about 10 minutes in the middle of the day so you can actually tweak it. You want to write down your daily notes in the notebook as well. That's part of your monitoring process because you'll come up with additional little odds and ends things that you want to do. So make sure you're writing all that down in the same place. Then do a deep dive review at the end of the day and then really prepare properly with some notes for the next day. So the following are some common mistakes that I see out there that I want to touch on for you. So some of the common mistakes are trying to force 14 hours in a day. making your activities too general, doing a 15-minute plan as opposed to a minimum 30-minute plan, not being in a quiet place, getting a little bit creative in the process. You've got to do it my way, and then not monitoring. And then most common is just giving up. Just like with any habit, anything you want to do, if you give up too soon on this system, then you're going to fail. So a few frequently asked questions that I want to toss out for you. Should I do this over the weekend? Not necessarily. I'm a big believer that you want to kind of have some downtime and also give your weekend to your family and not necessarily have it too organized and planned. Can I use another type of notebook? No, you can't. It's got to be a spiral notebook. It's got to be an 8.5 by 11 notebook. If you don't use that kind of notebook, you're not going to be successful. When should I return to calls? I get this question a lot. Sometimes it's okay to block out a couple of little chunks of time for that purpose. Can I do the planning the night before? No, you can't. You can jot down, if you're used to doing the planning the night before, jot down a few notes, but make sure this plan is fully developed that next morning. What if my brain dump doesn't add up to the time allowed that day? Then that's a gift, for example. Go deeper. Think about some of the medium-term things that you want to accomplish, some of the longer-term. But don't go into a 10-hour day with only 5 hours worth of stuff. It's a giant waste of time. Go ahead and think of those additional things, even if it's reading a book or taking a nap, those additional things that you're filling up the time available. Can I make changes to the day during the day? Of course you can make tweaks and adjustments because, if time permits, things do change. What happens if the day crashes and burns? It will occasionally, hopefully not very often. Then you either have to just give up and regroup on it. So I want to give you, in the spirit of taking this to the next level, I'm going to give you a little technique called a stress cloud. Now, one of the reasons that people want and really are yearning to have better control of the day is, in fact, because they want to reduce the amount of stress. So I actually started this technique for myself about 5 years ago, and I do this for myself about twice a month, and really the stress just kind of vaporizes when you do it. So here's how it works. The first thing that you want to do is draw a little stick figure, as simple as that sounds. On a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, just draw a little stick figure. That's you. The next thing, imagine the sky out there, and it's a clear blue sky, but those things that are feeling weight to you, the stress to you, is a cloud. So you have a series of these clouds, and in my typical kind of times I do this, I might have 3 to 6, 7 clouds up there. Now, if you fill the sky with clouds, the sun can't get in, so you have got to address it. So draw different sizes of clouds depending on how big the stress is. The next thing you want to do is, what is a one word that describes that stress you're feeling in that cloud? So write that down. The next thing, write 1 to 3 actions that will reduce or see that cloud kind of vaporize for you. So as you can see from this, I had a meeting, I was prepping for a trip, and I had a talk I was doing. So those were a few of the things that could be done that would reduce that stress that's available. Then you want to take these bullet points and then weave those into your daily calendar. So this is not necessarily about doing it today. Wheel it into your advanced daily calendar moving forward, and then try to back in to getting those things accomplished. And then simply tackle those on a daily basis. You're going to find, if you can do this for yourself, it's going to make a big difference, and then go back and take a look at it 3 to 5 days later. Makes a big difference in reducing. So this is called a stress cloud process. It's very simple, and I encourage everyone to try to do it. So again, that's for you, and here's a blank little canvas that you can start with if you're doing it for yourself. So let's just talk about the monitoring process of how you're doing with all this. So you make a simple monitoring chart. Another thing is making appointments to yourself to monitor it. So what I oftentimes will do on my day timer, I like to use an old-fashioned day timer and an Outlook calendar. I'll literally make appointments to myself to monitor different things. Change the actions that you're doing in the plans, not the goals. Try to keep your goals the same. Don't back off on your goals. Review these actions on a daily basis. How am I doing? What did I learn from this process? And then certainly do a deep dive on a quarterly and monthly basis. I oftentimes think about this kind of like a football game, in that there's a reason the coaches go into the locker room halftime, the middle of their game, and that you should have a halftime. It's not just to rest, it's also to regroup and plan for the second half of your day. So many of you have heard the adage before, intentions without actions equal squat. So I really encourage that if you can just put some energy into this and act on this as quickly as you can. And the best way to act on this, I think, is going to be to reach back to Surefire, get the books, get some of the templates. I'll be able to help you. You can certainly see my contact information on this webinar. Reach back to me and I'll certainly help you as well. So a few key takeaways of what I've talked about. Number one is mastering time is in fact a choice. Your ability to do this is a choice. As you can see, even the skills are super simple, and the difference between the most successful and the least is not in IQ, it's in the choice. The second is, if you fail to plan, then plan to fail. It takes 30 days, so be patient with yourself. Be proactive, not reactive. That's one of the fundamental elements you need to address first, and that you want to monitor, monitor, monitor. It's so important. The numbers don't lie, so you've got to know them and you've got to take the inventory. And last but certainly not least, we oftentimes think about success as just an outcome or a noun. It's not. Success is a verb. So I want to thank everybody certainly for joining us today and listening to me. Don't hang up yet. We've got some offers in terms of getting the books and also connecting back to my friends at Surefire to be able to help you be more successful. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. So back to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Mark. We want to ask if you would like a free copy of one of Mark G. Richardson's best-selling books, How Fit is Your Business, Fit to Grow, or The Art of Time Mastery. All we ask for in return is a brief conversation to answer your questions on digital marketing. This is a great opportunity for you to see how partnering with a digital marketing company can make a huge improvement in your marketing efforts. So now we will announce today's winner. Today's lucky recipient of the Google Home Hub is Michael Scher. Congratulations, Michael. Please email marketing@surefirelocal.com with your full mailing address and we'll ship that right out. A huge thank you to Mark and to all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. We hope you learned something new and look forward to seeing you on future webinars. You can check those out at the link at the top of your homepage. Please take a minute to fill out the survey at the end and let us know how we did and what topics you would like to hear about in the future. We love checking out the topics you suggest when we plan our webinar schedule. Thanks and have a great day.